Do you think that because of that meticulous process and you guys doing it at such a high level, I mean, I would assume that Harley probably was pretty impressed by that.
Yeah, no one else was doing it.
In the early days, nobody else was making a successful black shirt.
Hey y'all, you're listening to episode 6 of Canned Heat, a show highlighting makers and entrepreneurs in the vintage clothing space. I'm Michael Slater, a vintage reseller and content creator based in Fort Worth, Texas. Usually on this podcast, we talk to folks who are building clothing brands right now. And while Steve McDonald and Pam Stern, our two guests today, are not currently working in the clothing industry, they were dream guests for the podcast because they are responsible for some of the most iconic t-shirt designs of the 80s and 90s. They worked as artists for the 3D Emblem Corporation, a merchandise company that developed products for lots of brands like Smith & Wesson and Easy Riders magazine. They created pieces for other t-shirt companies like Just Brass and Trinity Products, and they even released their own lines of merchandise, such as Backroads, Truckers Only, and Back to Earth. While you may not have heard of all of these names, I'm sure you know the brand under whose license 3D Emblem created their most popular t-shirts, Harley Davidson. It all began in 1952 when a retired World War II pilot founded 3D Company Incorporated, a small-scale print shop located in Fort Worth, Texas, that specialized in emblems and lettering. In 1964, Steve McDonald began working for the shop after school at just 14 years old. Around this time, the owner took on a partner named Ty Powell, who was more of an engineer and personally built new printing machines for the company. 3D started making simple graphics and iron-on transfers for local businesses, sports teams, and college fraternities. In the early 80s, the company was sold to Jim Want, who really saw the potential in some of the t-shirts they were making. Sometime around 1982, Jim was able to purchase the license to Harley Davidson, and this is really the pivotal moment in the story of this brand. Steve McDonald, now art director of the company, and the artists that he brought in, like Pam Stern, spent the following decade creating t-shirts that didn't just embody the Harley Davidson brand, but also the iconography of the larger biker movement that was sweeping through the states at this time. As a result, these t-shirts are a quintessential piece of Americana, and they're highly sought after today. So the legacy of 3D Emblem lives on through vintage t-shirt collectors and bikers all around the world, but I'll let the experts fill in the rest of the story. As far as I can tell, this is the most comprehensive recording of their story to date. So I am very excited and immensely honored that Steve would welcome us into his home and that he would invite Pam to join us for this conversation. Enjoy. Steve and Pam, thank you so much for being willing to talk to us. Whether y'all know it or not, you guys have lots of fans of your art around the world. So we are honored that both of you would be willing to sit down for this conversation. With me is my buddy Nate of Grilled Garments Vintage. Nate is kind of responsible for facilitating this meeting, so thank you, Nate. Nate, how did you and Steve end up connecting at first?
I found Steve's Instagram page actually from the 3D Emblem official Instagram page. They had mentioned him in his artwork, and automatically I was intrigued. I followed him maybe for a few weeks, saw that he was active, and I think I had messaged him saying like, "Hey, I actually have this design," because he was posting some graphics and stuff, and he was like, "Oh, cool." He replied back, and then from then, I was like, well, it's worth a shot. Might as well ask him if he could meet up and see if we could do like some sort of interview, get to know him a little bit more. I'm just obviously I'm a big fan of 3D Emblem. I'm a sort of a history buff. I like to know what it was like and stuff like that, and I just love learning. So we'd set up the first interview, and it went amazing. And yeah.
Pam, how did you get started making art?
I made art all my life. So I was drawing when I was a little kid, and I drew a picture once of my mother in her bra doing ironing, and it made this big stink at a family dinner party, and I was like, "Wow, you can affect people that way." So I just kept on with it.
Gotcha. Steve, how about you? How did you get into art?
Well, I did about the same thing. I did a picture of my uncle. He had this real cool mustache, and he was kind of like the rebel in our family, and it was just a sketch. I was probably 10 years old. I was drawing long before then, like on brown paper bags. We wasn't the richest people in the world. I mean, grocery sacks. But they sent that picture to my uncle, and it went just like yours. It went all over all the kin folks. Everybody knew about it, and it was kind of like laughing their butts off.
Yeah.
But it was and my dad really enjoyed it. You know, he really encouraged me a lot, because he was always, every time I drew something, it was funny to him. He would laugh his butt off.
That's cool. It's cool that you guys kind of had that, some support from your families to kind of pursue
My dad
that.
was artistic, and so
Really?
he did encourage that in me.
Well, my dad was artistic too,
Yeah.
and so was one of my brothers.
Very good. So, Steve, you got started at 3D Emblem first, right? What was that like?
I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know what a screen print was, or silk screen, or none of that business. And it's like a kid at work asked me if I was interested in a job, because he was trying to get out of there. Because the owner was like a ex-retired Air Force B-29 pilot in World War II. He was really, really a knothead. Very hard to work for. But after I got in there and started learning this stuff, because they had like a big horizontal camera, it was just for a kid, 14 years old. I said, how am I here? It's like I'm learning all this stuff. And it just became an obsession almost. I had to learn all of it, because we did everything. We started off doing iron-ons for sororities and fraternities for colleges. And a lot of days I'd come in after school and just spend 4 hours in the dark room taking shots and doing layouts. And the whole thing was a piece of acetate. You take some petroleum jelly and stick a letter font on it and make your own letters, and stick it to a piece of plastic, put it underneath the screen and shoot it. That's what I did a lot of. But I did everything from, I know you probably have to wash screens out with the ink and all that business. So when you've done it all and you started pretty much at the bottom, you kind of appreciate where you are.
Right. So, Pam, when did you come into 3D Emblem? How did you meet Steve?
I was working at Dillard's in the advertising department, and I was miserable. And I think there was an ad in the paper, and I came in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I came in and had my little portfolio, and I think you hired me right away.
Yeah, it didn't take but one glance.
So Steve was the one to interview you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And you guys, how long has it been since y'all have been in the same room?
20 years.
Wow.
At least 20.
I thought it was 4 or 5, but what do I know?
Time flies.
Time flies.
Yeah, it's been ages.
So, Steve, how did you kind of work your way up to being the art director?
I always felt like I was always art director.
Right.
I think so.
And because it just started with me, it's like we hired one. I think Pam was one of my first. No, I had 2 or 3 more before her.
Yeah.
They just didn't last very long. They was, I don't know, what would you call Dave?
He was a genius with problems.
Most artists all had problems.
Right.
Wait till you get 10 in a room.
Yeah.
And I had another one before him. He was they was both from New York.
Yeah. I spent the first 3 months there laughing. I would go home with my mouth sore
Yeah.
from laughing all day. It was so crazy and fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dave Gardner, he's allowed to get up and break dance in the middle of the floor. Or do the Uncle Jed
And it was
twist.
just continuous. He was just hilarious.
Yeah, he'd make a great comedian.
Yeah.
I've talked to him the other day, and he was just laughing. I said, you ought to go back. He's got a band that he goes to once a week or so. I said, that Mike Tyson thing you do, he imitates Mike Tyson. He sounds just like him. He'd put a piece of tape over his nose and start talking like Mike. I said, you do that while you're in that band, you'll have the whole audience laughing.
Yeah, it's cool that you guys had that camaraderie.
Yeah.
And I think we could tell just even walking in the room, you guys kind of have that relationship.
Yep.
It's cool.
It's always been there.
Yep.
Do you have any other stories of the art room and what it was like in there?
It's kind of hard to explain. I'm sure Pam does.
Oh, I remember having a pencil graveyard right over my desk.
I'll never forget that time you was hiding in the T-shirts.
We used to mess with Jim because I don't think he had much of a sense of humor. And so it was really easy to get him, and he didn't know what to do. He would just get frozen. And one day I was practicing swimming on one of the crates of T-shirts.
Yeah.
And he just walked through. He couldn't even say anything, it was just, oh my God. So, yeah, there were a lot of stories like that.
Well,
it was fun, and sometimes it was terrifying. It was both.
If you was there, I guarantee you'd be laughing.
Yeah. Yeah. You couldn't help it.
So I want to ask you about the work a little bit more. So what was the design process like? Like, how did you go from a concept to a T-shirt? Like, what were the steps in between?
Jim, I always went to Jim first. He told me what he wanted. Then me and Pam had our own office. And we'd get in there, and we had to come up with usually about 10 designs.
Yeah.
And we'd start coming up with ideas, just brainstorming. Say, look at this. No, I don't like that. Look at this. I don't like that either. We'd love to spend half a day in there, just brainstorming. And then you got to be real clever with words sometimes. And I wasn't always that good. But together, we always made it work somehow.
Yeah, and then we would assign the shirts to somebody that we thought could do the design better.
Yeah, because everybody had a level in there as far as artistic skills. Mm-hmm. And you had to be careful who you gave what to.
Yes.
That got real tough. But as far as, coming up with ideas, we had a lot of books. We probably didn't have enough books.
No, we didn't.
But we was always trying to get ideas from other designs or stuff somebody else did. Well, we couldn't rip it off, or we would not rip it off, but we could get that look. Because when you see a piece of art, you can duplicate it and change it and give it your look.
Right.
And
then there was that eagle. So that eagle?
Yeah, the one that hit the windshield.
Not that eagle, the original one. Okay, and it was a big seller. So Jim, every time there was a meeting with Jim, he was like, "We need a new eagle."
Yeah.
You did the first one, is that right?
I don't remember.
Anyway, the last one I think is the one I did, and it did. It looked like an eagle that hit the windshield, and because you couldn't really change it that much, and still, And I actually went to South Dakota to Bike Week and Sturgis, and somebody had engraved that on the fairing of his motorcycle.
Oh, wow.
It's like, oh my God.
It looked like an eagle really hit the windshield.
And we used to get tattoo magazines for ideas. And occasionally you'd see one of our designs tattooed. Usually the worst thing we ever did, tattooed on somebody's body for life.
Yeah, we always had a subscription to Easy Rider, In the Wind. There's 2 or 3 others that we got ideas from. But it was pretty much, they really liked those shirts, even then.
Yeah.
I mean, they loved them.
Yeah. So we're kind of getting into the biker Harley Davidson culture thing. So do you remember, can you kind of explain the story with 3D and Harley and how they were kind of connected?
I'm not 100% sure, but I think it was an accident. I think I may not be, should be talking about this.
I don't know. I'd be careful.
But I know we was doing a lot of black market stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was 30, 40 years ago. I can't get in trouble now. But I think we did some Harley Davidson shirts that wasn't real licensed or anything like that.
Uh-huh.
And they seemed to have got a hold of them because there was always people checking for Harley,
Yeah. They were very particular.
Right.
They got more particular as time went on.
Yeah.
Because we could do anything at first.
Yeah. Even back then, they had a picture in Easy Rider of Willie G getting on a Harley. And I said, this would make a nice design, the way it was shaped and everything. So I pretty much duplicated it right off the photograph and put Willie G on a Harley. And it said, put your ass on some class.
Yeah.
And they got mad.
Wow.
I think we had to quit printing that shirt.
Well, they all came down and had a meeting with Jim.
Yeah.
And then the license thing got worked out.
But that was one of those things where things are, you didn't see no way of, they just didn't let anybody have a license.
Right.
But the art was so neat and unusual. That was after we got the halftones going.
Well, exactly. They did the first black T-shirts that worked well. That had a base underneath them and had that down by the time I got there.
Yeah. So if you can explain a little bit more about that, Steve, the separation process that you kind of invented, pioneered, really, like what is the advantage to that for someone who doesn't know a lot about screen printing?
Some days we'd spend easy 40 hours a week in the darkroom, wouldn't we?
Oh yeah, it took forever. So it was taking how many, 25 different shots of the artwork, and then deciding which piece of that artwork, what color that was going to be, and which one was the right shot for that particular piece, and then Ruby lithing that out and then putting the dots in.
And then I had to train 10 artists to do that.
Wow.
Which I was still pioneering myself.
You're still learning.
I wasn't sure.
Right.
Wasn't real sure what I had.
It was wild and crazy.
I asked one of the guys that was the ink supplier, I think it's Dave Daggerta in Dallas. I said, is there any way I can take some screen printing courses to get more technology on where we are to improve this look? He said, guy, y'all have already improved it. Nobody can touch you now.
Yeah.
Coming just I want to tune in real quick. Like even as a screen printer, like these days, we don't see a lot of. I mean, I've sent Steve a few of our designs that we've been doing lately, but like nothing really compares to what y'all did 30, 40 years ago.
But I don't understand why you would want that. That's what's so weird.
Right.
When we look at it, we don't see that.
It's just a very unique look.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I know the answer to this, but do you think that because of that meticulous process and you guys doing it at such a high level, I mean, I would assume that Harley probably was pretty impressed by that.
Yeah. No one else was doing it.
In the early days, nobody else was making a successful black shirt.
We had two competitors. I believe one was R.K. Stratman.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I've seen those.
And Hollaback.
Hollaback. And I worked for both of them after I quit.
Really?
So did I.
Wow.
But they could not match what we was doing.
Yeah.
They couldn't figure it out.
Well, it's telling that even they came to you after, right?
Yeah.
You know, they knew you had the secret sauce, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then computers came in and all gone.
Everything changes.
Yeah, everything.
Everything changed overnight. I came up with the idea to computerize the art department. And Jim thought that was stupid. He said, you can't train an artist to use computers. And I said, well, I know
he doesn't hear this.
I know of people that's doing it on computers. I read about it in magazines and all this business. Matter of fact, there's a company out of California called Winterland. Remember them?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we was always getting other people's shirts and looking at them. And I'm sure they was looking at ours too.
Yeah.
But they had a computer department before we did. So I went and told Jim, let's get a computer. And
it was Roger that talked him into that computer. Wasn't it Roger? And then they hired Jimmy?
Well, I talked him into doing computers before Roger ever got there.
Okay.
And then Roger came along. He knew a lot about computers.
Yeah.
But he wasn't really a computer artist.
Did Jim listen to you or to Roger?
He pretty much listened to Roger, and they wind up hiring two more guys, Will and Jimmy Jenkins, in a computer. They called it the next department, computer department. So we'd do the art, we'd give it to Jimmy, he'd do the SEPs.
Which we didn't like at first.
We didn't like it first.
It was just horrible. The transition was long and painful.
It took me a year to get even close. But I believe it was old Will that was a tinker. He kind of messed and played with Photoshop when he found the RGB and the calculations down there where you go in and separate red out of green and get blue or whatever.
And that was before the dongle was, invented, where you just
matter of fact, I got the dongle right there.
Yep.
On this 100-year-old computer.
And then it was like, we got to do color artwork, and it was fabulous.
And we didn't have to worry about separations.
Yeah, to do it in color, because it was black and white, pencil and spraying it and highlights, and it was a pain in the, other nether regions.
Well, when you're sitting there trying to figure it out, what's the best way to do this? And there was probably some more ways we could have done it.
Yeah.
But this was the quickest. And I had 10 artists in there sitting. I had to keep them all busy between telling jokes.
So we kind of touched on Harley Davidson. Do any of the other projects that you did kind of stick out in your mind? I know you did the Truckers Only, and you had mentioned earlier the Nature Tees.
We lost our Harley license.
Mm-hmm.
Probably from some nefarious business practices.
And that was kind of like somebody jerking the rug out from underneath us. We couldn't do Harley anymore.
Yeah. And that was the beginning of my end, because that was my favorite thing, that and the animals.
Did it take a lot of business away? Like, did it just halt a lot of the stuff that went on?
I wasn't really in on the business part, so I don't know how much business they lost.
I'm pretty sure it was a hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they got hit.
But
it just started going downhill from there. And he said, Steve, I think I can do a line of trucker shirts. I said, trucker shirts? He said, there ain't nothing but like 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 truck stops in the United States. And they're all gift shop. Every one of them's a gift shop.
Yep.
We did a bunch.
Yeah.
We sold a bunch.
First year he did about $1 million. The second year he's doing about $5 million.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a hit.
Yeah. Ugly, but a hit.
Kind of in that same vein, do y'all have a singular piece that sticks out in your mind as like being your favorite design that you ever made?
With me, it was just all production art. It wasn't like sitting up on top of a mountain and being this great artist.
Yeah.
Painting with oils. We had to get work.
You had a deadline.
We had a deadline.
Yeah.
You couldn't,
I have favorites.
You probably do.
You don't?
I know, I can tell your favorites.
Oh, really?
Is those Rebel, the South is where it's at with all those motorcycles riding.
No, that is not my favorite. I was like, no, I don't want to do this. No.
They could not get enough of those.
And then there were pinups for a while. We were doing,
we did pinups.
You kept doing them. It's like, no, I don't want to do this.
I didn't have a favorite, really.
Yeah.
To me, it was all about the same. It was a job.
Right.
Pam's different. She'd fall in love with her art.
That's a bad thing.
So what was the best one?
I liked that big Indian design.
I like that one with the wolf.
Yeah, that covered the whole front of the shirt.
I love that.
I really enjoyed that one.
I love that.
And The eagle that's flying over a city that never really did all that well. I've got
That did very well.
It did?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah.
And some of the eagle designs.
Almost any eagle shirt you did.
Yeah, I love doing the eagle.
You did a lot of the nature
I can
stuff?
do it, yeah. I can do an eagle blindfolded. I did 1 million of them. You did too.
We had them coming, going, bottom up, top down.
Yep.
It's crazy because like I see stuff online that I've never seen before, and I constantly look on there. I'm like, wow, it's crazy how many designs they had.
Yeah.
Have we thought about how many designs? Have you ever thought about how many designs we actually did?
Well, we did 2 collections a year, right? At least 2.
How many was in the collection?
About 20, 15 to 20. And then we would carry some over.
Mm-hmm.
And
20 a season, or 20 or maybe 50 a year?
I'd have to look at the catalogs. I didn't bring any catalogs.
Let's say hypothetically if we did 50 designs, I'm thinking we did more like 70, 80,
Yeah.
70 or 80 designs.
Plenty of them were, I did one that it was a takeoff on I can't even remember the name of the artist. There's a guy with a pitchfork and his wife.
I've seen that one, yeah.
Okay.
American Gothic.
And
American Gothic.
And the guy that used to buy a bunch of our shirts, he says, "Nobody will buy that. The woman's too ugly.
It's so like crazy.
Nobody will buy that."
Oh, that's funny. So what is it like looking back on this? And I'm not sure how much you guys know, but 3D Emblem nowadays seems to have a cult following, really. It's very popular in Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Thailand. It's a lot bigger than it is here, but it's big here. And we see your designs sell for hundreds.
Sometimes thousands.
Sometimes thousands of dollars.
Wish I'd hung on to my shirts.
What does that feel like for you guys? Like, what's your reaction to that?
Well, I used to bring home, I had a son. His name was Bubba. And I'd bring him, every time I did a new design, I'd bring it home and he'd wear it to school. And he was the walk on the, the cock on the walk. And I guess probably after, easy 25 years, he probably had a whole closet full of shirts. And after I divorced my second wife, I said, "Where'd all the shirts go?" Well, I have no clue. But it was a bunch of them.
Yeah.
I mean, you figure like one or two a month anyway. There's a bunch of shirts. And she had like how many? I don't know. She had to have at least 200 or 300.
I had a room full of them.
Wow.
And my son, I would try to give them to my kids. And it's like, my son didn't like the black T-shirt thing. And then later on in life, he bought a Harley. And he goes, "Mom, where are those T-shirts?"
He came back around.
And all I had were like extra large. So I gave him a few.
Yeah, that's the problem when people come over. You don't see the value, but they do.
Yeah, I didn't.
And they want a shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And that's perfect. Where half of them went, you just
Yeah,
give them to
you
kid
give 'em
folks.
away.
Right.
It was fun, it was fun. And then
Yeah,
I had a
never wear
friend
'em.
that took him to a bar and sold him for $5 for me.
Wow.
Wow.
I don't know.
And how much were
It's
they?
hard to see ahead.
How much were they worth back then? How much were they selling them for? Like at the stores?
It was probably in the 90s, wasn't it?
Yeah, $20 maybe.
I don't even remember.
I don't even think it was that much.
I don't even remember.
We don't know what retail was.
We didn't know
Yeah.
when they became popular.
I've seen a few online that actually still have the tags and stuff, and I can't remember like what the price was. I think it is around like the
Around
15
15 to 20. Yeah.
When did they start becoming a collector's item? That's the question.
I think 2000. I don't know.
I
Probably
would
the
say
2000s.
Yeah, I would say around the 2000s, probably. What are you guys doing today? I know you're both making art in some capacity, so.
I do everything. I've got all this art sitting here. I probably got 3 terabytes of art. And I got to look at it one day. Why am I just putting these on T-shirts? So now I'm putting them on blankets. I'm putting them on metal signs. I'm putting them on those mouse pads. I'm putting them on everything. And it's like, why waste the art? You put it on everything.
Yeah. Cool.
And it's not been a bad living.
Yeah, that's awesome. How can people find that?
One's called Pastime Signs. One's called Desperate Enterprise. One's called Readyville Signs. These are metal signs. And I got a blanket guy in California, Silicon Valley Textiles. I know I'm leaving some out. I can't remember them all off the top of my head.
Cool. And Pam, how about you? Can you tell us about your art?
Well, I went from 3D, I went freelance for about 10 years. And then I worked at a couple more T-shirt companies until I got completely burned out. And when I got to the point of the last company I worked for closed, and I was ready for Social Security. So I had been doing clay for quite a while before, just playing with it. And I got into it seriously, and that's what I do now. I have an Etsy store and a website, and I take commissions, and I'm working on a couple commissions right now.
Called Pam Art.
Pam Stern Art. PamSternArt.com. And then my Etsy store is PS Porcelain.
It's really cool that you're on Etsy, because I'm sure a lot of the listeners to this are selling on Etsy, and
Etsy's been very good for me.
Yeah, very good.
But she's selling pottery.
Yeah, it's ceramic.
Yeah, ceramic. Yeah.
Awesome. So, do you guys have any advice for any aspiring artists, aspiring screen printers, designers? What advice would you give to someone who's...
It used to be a great niche for a young artist, starting out artist, because there was a big need. Now anybody can do art on the computer, scanning it, changing it, so on and so forth. So I think it's tougher now, don't you?
I took a big dip in my income after 2000.
Me too.
Everybody had art. Everybody had Photoshop.
Yeah.
But in 90 to 2000, made a lot of money. Did very well. Too bad I didn't save it. Well, I guess I saved it. I built a house.
Yeah.
Yeah, you saved it. You're doing okay.
But, you're going to make a lot of mistakes.
You need to develop a style, something that's not the same as everything that's out there, and just work. I mean, it's that 10,000 hour things.
Yeah.
Put in the hours.
You got to be very focused.
And it means,
It's kind of like Emmitt Smith being in the zone. I'm sure you remember Super Bowl, in the 93. Emmitt Smith was in the zone, and that's kind of the way an artist has to be. Sometimes I can be working, I'm sure Pam's done it too, be working on a computer for 8 hours at a time. Eventually, you just become part of the art.
Right.
It's crazy.
Well, I was more hands-on than I didn't really enjoy the computer
She didn't
stuff.
like computers.
But, I mean, I got a stat camera and everything when I went freelance and set up a room for that. But it wasn't fun all by myself. It was more fun in the art room with a bunch of other crazy people.
Mm.
So, work. It's work. And if you really love doing it, then you don't have to be told to do it. But you have to put in the hours.
Well, I think that's a good place to leave it. Thank you guys so much, both of you, for allowing us to do this. I think people are going to be really interested in this and hearing your stories. So,
Very good.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to Candid. If you're new to the pod and you enjoyed what you heard, you'll be glad to know that we have 5 other episodes out right now on all platforms, each featuring a special guest that has a specific area of expertise within vintage. If you're listening to the audio version of this podcast and you're curious about some of the designs that we talked about, as well as what the art room looked like, you'll be glad to know that there is a video version of this episode as well that includes some exclusive footage and reference photos. You can find this on our YouTube channel. Just search Canned Heat Podcast. On that same note, we've released a 20-minute unedited video that we shot with Pam and Steve right after recording this podcast. Nate and I were able to film their reactions to some pieces that we brought from our closets, and Pam was kind enough to show us some original t-shirts and artboards from her personal collection. This bonus content is also available on the Canned Heat Podcast YouTube channel, or you can watch it on Nate's Instagram at Grailed Garments Vintage. That's at Grailed Garments VNTG. As always, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and write us a comment or review if you're enjoying the show. If you know someone making waves in the vintage community and you'd like to hear them on the show, let me know at Slater Thrifts or at Canned Heat Pod on IG. By the way, I'm stoked about our next episode that will feature Joel Slater, a part-time auto parts reseller on eBay, but also my dad. It was really fun getting to talk to him about reselling and more. But for now, don't forget to wash cold and hang dry.